Hello, beautiful people, and welcome
Hello.
to the first coffee chat of 2023. That's crazy. We're so excited for you all to be joining us. You guys are probably familiar with our faces by now, but in the event that you aren't, I'm Kyra and Dawkins.
And I'm Mackenzie Finklea.
And today we have the absolute privilege of talking to a couple of our authors within our ecosystem about navigating the work-life balance of, because really being an author is a lot of work. And for people who have other aspects and they're juggling other parts of their lives, how do they find the time to
Yeah.
carve out being an author and really incorporate that into their broader day? So we
Yes.
have one of our guests with us right now. And so without further ado, drum roll please. Dun, 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 dun. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell our audience a little bit about you and your book?
Yeah, I'm an author. I'm also a full-time comms manager. So balancing the two has been whoa. Balancing the two has been quite hectic, but it's been a good learning journey. So my book specifically is a mental health memoir. So I do talk a little bit in the book about kind of just my work life and my mental health and my personal life and bringing it all together. So super excited to chat more about kind of the work-life balance that you mentioned.
I'm looking forward to hearing about it greatly. I think that's one of the things that a lot of authors struggle with. We don't all have the luxury of being able to just be writers. Um, so yeah, and also treating your writing as more than a hobby is important as well.
Yeah, I think it's a big balance because I've had other hobbies that I've tried to monetize and it takes the fun away from it. So I've wanted to kind of balance the writing as like I want to keep writing. So I don't want to become like I don't I don't know, I don't necessarily want to become a full-time author, but I want to continue being an author, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Just sort of,
Yeah.
it's one of your many identities.
Yeah, I have a lot of labels. I struggle with that.
I think a lot of people identify with that as well, though. So this is going to be a great chat today.
Yeah.
Well, so
Excellent. So I
kicking
guess,
things off here with our first question, and just a
mhm.
reminder to the audience members, if you have a question at any time for our guests or for us, feel free to drop it in the chat over there, and we might just bring it on screen. But for now, we have some prepared questions for you, Lauren, and we'll start with, when was the moment you knew you wanted to write a book? Tell us about what that was like.
Well, so my backstory is that I did not start out writing a memoir, much less a mental health memoir. I started out writing a business book because, like, my day job, like I said, I'm in communications. I started in marketing and social media, and I coached, I guess I don't know how I feel about the social media coach term, but I was a consultant for executives and I managed their LinkedIn presence. So like behind the scenes, I did their posts, I did their articles, I added people, I wrote recommendations. Like if they were on LinkedIn, it was me acting on their behalf. And similar to writing, I did that while I had a full-time job. And I was like, I want to help more people, but I couldn't with a full-time job. You can only take on so many clients. So I was like, oh, I'll write a business book about LinkedIn. And then I started writing my LinkedIn book, and I was so burnt out because I would go to work every day working on social media, and then I would write the book. And I was like, there's no way I can do this. So at that point, I was halfway through I don't know what we're calling it today, Never Write Alone program or manuscripts or whatever. And I had already invested so much in the class, both in terms of time and money. And I was like, I don't want to like squander this opportunity. So I talked to my editor about like, what else could I write? And at the time I was journaling and kind of publishing on Medium. And it was like, okay, let's move into writing a memoir. And that's when it became. So it was never like I really set out to write the book that I created. It kind of created itself.
What's really funny is that a lot of authors throughout our process, especially to your point, like in the community of never writing alone, books do kind of, it's weird when you enter into the writing process and your book evolves into something you weren't expecting, but then it kind of becomes the true manifestation of what it was really meant to be. So it sounds like it really happened for you.
And discovery.
And I went into the program, like once I switched to memoir, I had a whole idea of what I wanted the book to be about, like kind of behind the facade of social media. But then when I got into the author groups and I was like in small groups with other authors in the program, they would ask questions like, well, what about this? And then that kind of veered my whole book a whole different direction. So it really did, it wrote itself in a way.
That's so wonderful. So we actually would like to add somebody else to the conversation. Cool. Dramatic drum roll, please.
Violently shakes computer.
Yeah.
Hello, Kelly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, how are you?
Yay. Reunited.
Sorry, I had a little bit of technical difficulty.
Oh, no, you're fine. I mean, you just joined right in time for our first question. So in your answer to the first question, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your book and sort of the why behind your book?
So I'm Kelly Colón. I am a professor and a workplace strategist. So I help organizations navigate uncertainty, essentially. I knew that I wanted to write a book, and like Lauren, the book, so Life Interrupted, is not the book I started to write, like so many, right? Yeah. So I originally thought I was going to write a business book. I was going to write a business book about decision-making in times of crisis. That's what I was going to that was the whole idea. And in the process of sort of investigating and researching, I conducted all these interviews with folks, and had some what they call, I guess, the writer's block. And our developmental editor is like, where are my pages? And I was like, I can't write. I can't focus. What it came down to is I said to him, I think I'm writing the wrong book. I think there are so many stories that I'm hearing from people about resiliency and about how this pandemic interrupted their lives and what that really meant for them and their careers and their families. I was like, I think I need to write their story. But of course, trying to protect the interview process, because I had never really asked these people, hey, I'm going to write your memoir, right? I took basically about 250 interviews, and I interwove them together into characters and had those characters essentially walk through the story of all of these people that I had interviewed. And so that's kind of how it came about.
Wow. That's really cool.
I can
Thank
tell
you for sharing that. Yeah, go ahead, Kyra.
There's definitely some overlap. And again, as you both shared about how the book evolved into what it was ultimately meant to be in community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the ultimately, the purpose of the book still reflected aspects of your original intention. Like the book that you ended up writing was not the book that you came into the program thinking you were going to write, but there still is a continuity and purpose, for lack of a better way of framing it.
Yes. And Kelly, I appreciate you saying that, you weren't able to deliver the pages, and then you realized you weren't writing the right book. But once you were able to start writing what felt like the right book, how did you make space in your day and your life in working towards your author goals, your page count, etc.?
Oh, it was hard. I mean, because I was a professor. I have 4 children, so I was working full time as well, traveling all over the US for my job. So it was really hard. There was a lot, there was a lot of early morning writing, a lot of nighttime writing, a lot of weekends where, I'd be like, you guys, it's going to be McDonald's for dinner because I'm just like in my zone. And so there was definitely times where it had to be scheduled into my day, because when that didn't happen, You could clearly see a correlation between when I wasn't proactively scheduling time to write and, saying, well, I'll just get to it. I would not be able to get my pages done. Right. And so for me, two of the things that were so helpful was the writing community, right? We would have everyone would log in, and your cameras may or may not have been on, and you're not really interacting, but you're in a virtual room with people. That was really helpful because it lent a level of accountability. You didn't want to let your fellow writers down, right? So there was that piece of it. That was hugely, hugely impactful. And then Eric had mentioned one time, change it up. Find those places that inspire you. For me, those are libraries and hotel lobbies, ironically. And I would just schedule time. Like my entire book was essentially written in coffee shops, like basically hotel lobbies and libraries. Yep.
That's cool. Being in tune with not just the timing, but also the environment.
Yeah.
That's special. And because also I'm sure a lot of your writing was done on the same laptop that you do your work on. Yeah. And changing the space helps change your mindset when it comes to shifting gears and getting into the writing zone. What about you, Lauren? How do you make space for writing? How do you create those writing habits?
So a little bit of the same, a little bit different. Environment is super important for me. So I have a favorite coffee shop. I go there every weekend and sometimes during the week if I can. And that's where I get the most writing done. But unlike Kelly, I found I felt kind of forced when I would get on the calls with all the other authors. Like I felt like I had to almost perform in those. So I found more benefit because I have a tendency to compare myself to other people. So like in the chat, when people are like, oh, I got X amount of words done. And I was like, oh, I got a third of that done. I would walk away like not feeling accomplished. So I actually found I wrote more on my own, but I had to find the time of day that worked best for me. So I'm like a morning person through and through. So I loved like just waking up first thing, getting my writing done like before my husband wakes up. And then when he wakes up, we can still have the whole day ahead of us. Now, I think the difference, because I started so late on my book, I didn't have an outline ready. So I was kind of just like going with the flow, trying to catch up instead of like coming in with an idea, with an outline. I don't know, Kelly, it looks like you're nodding, so you relate to that. Whereas like one of the projects I'm working on now, I'm taking the time to create an outline and to really think through the storyline and pull it together. So I'm kind of taking what worked, so the coffee shops in the early mornings, and then I'm mixing it with what I wish I had.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of that habit forming is just so much trial and error. You have to just give it a shot. Yeah. See if it works for you. I loved that you talked about like the community writing virtually. You tried it and it was not as good as your perfect morning coffee writing combo.
Yeah. And you have to find what works for you. I think like some weeks I'm super inspired, and then some days or weeks or months I'm like, nope, can't write. Like writer's block is here. And it's just, okay, well, is there something else I can do? Maybe I can read to kind of keep that just words at the forefront, or maybe I can write something totally unrelated as long as I keep the habit going. I found that to be pretty important for me.
I also used one of the tools for me too, because I'm always on the go. I discovered Otter AI. Yes. And it's like it literally changed my life, because I would be driving in the car and there would be an idea that would come into my head, and I knew like I can't write right at that moment. And so I would just open my app and I would record myself talking through a scene or talking through something that I was, even something that just jogged my memory about kind of a conversation I had or something interesting that I had seen. And then I would go back later and export those, as a Word document and expand upon it later. So Otter AI was hugely impactful for me.
Yeah, I think it's finding the tools that work for you is like super important. For me, that was just the simple notes app.
Yeah.
Like, because I have a Mac computer and I have an iPhone. So if I'm on the go, I would just like make a quick note in my notes app and then I would be able to just see it on my computer because it's synced. And it's how can you make it most efficient so you're not spending time like kind of going back and it's like, oh shoot, I had this great idea, but I don't remember it. And then you like go in circles, like trying to figure out what it was. If you do it in the moment, either saying it out loud, writing it down, whatever, it ends up making it like, then you can just jump right in where you left off almost.
Totally. I keep a notebook by my bed, and if I'm like trying to fall asleep, and then like as you're falling asleep, you have that great idea, and you're like, oh, you write it down. Or like when you're out and about and you're walking, sometimes I'll just open the video and I'll just record myself talking to my. The video was my instinct instead of the like voice recording app, but yeah, a little bit of whatever works for anyone, whatever's quickest, because like the photo thing is it's on your home screen. You just boop, open it up right there.
I mean, speaking of like, cultivating different tools and things, I have this at my side always. But we're a big fan of scribe writing over here. I talk a lot, so I use Otter AI all the time. But something that you both sort of picked up on inside of your answers is not only did you talk about sort of understanding which tools work best for you, but also earlier on in your answers, you talked about ways that you leverage the community space and how you were able to determine inside of your own writing process what was most effective for you in cultivating that relationship. So why would it be important for authors to pursue community or external accountability throughout the creative process? Would you agree that it's important?
For me, it was.
Go for it.
Go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead.
I was going to say it depends on the person. I think having an editor and having some people who understand the process is really important. But I found that when I shared my actual work with people, it almost welcomed too many opinions, too many thoughts, too much feedback for me to process all at one time. So like the beta reader aspect, when I sent my manuscript out to like maybe 5 or 6 beta readers to get their feedback, I was like instantly overwhelmed. And so it is beneficial, but at the same time, it kind of challenges you to trust your gut or oversee it. Like it's up to you. And I'm not very good at that. So it was hard for me. So I think it's nice to have community in a sense, like to cheer you on, but it was like I almost welcomed too much community in sharing my manuscript.
So the developmental editor was hugely helpful for me for the same reason, understanding the process, how you put things together. Was I on the right track? I think with regards to the developmental editor, what I struggled with that I will hopefully correct the next time is because I was behind, he would read stuff, give me feedback, but I didn't have time to go back and correct the feedback until I had already finished like several more chapters. Right. And so it was, I always felt like I was verbally getting feedback and applying it to future writing, but I couldn't go back and correct until later in the process. So that was really frustrating. It was super beneficial, but for me, I found that to be really frustrating. The beta reader piece, it was overwhelming, but in a different way. It was more of I'm standing in the middle of a town square naked, like waiting for people to point and stare, right? And it was, and getting that feedback back, good, bad, ugly, whatever it was difficult because it forced me to really be vulnerable and sit in that vulnerability that for me in other areas of my life I hadn't been.
That's a really good point. And I am so bad at sitting in vulnerability. And I think that's why I was so uncomfortable. Is like also a memoir, like you're sharing mental health memoir. Like
Yeah.
this is the first time a lot of even like my closest family had seen what I was going through. So like on top of the feedback about the writing, it's like, oh my God, are you okay? And it's like all the check-ins and everything. And you're putting your full self on display by sharing a book with someone. So totally hear you.
Well, as we move into our last planned question, I'm interested to hear first what you think, Lauren, because you did mention that you guys definitely seem to have two different opinions on how you like to interact with the writing community. So I'm interested to hear, where do you enjoy engaging with the writing community the most?
That's a good one. I formed some really close connections through the writing program, and we've kind of taken them off of, the quips and the Zooms and moved to Instagram is a big platform right now, but also texting. Like we've exchanged numbers, and it's I think it's just kind of we've done a good job of asking what's the best form of communication for us to stay engaged rather than trying to fit in a neat box of you have to be on this one platform. But I think there's a really engaging community on social media in particular. So the LinkedIns, the Instagrams, the Twitter, I love logging on and seeing kind of people's names that I one recognize, but two, I'm the only author that I know besides this author community. Like in person, I don't know any other authors. So it's really nice on social media to be able to kind of feel like I know people in a way. I don't know. What would you say, Kelly?
Oh, I'm 100% aligned. I mean, I loved the community because I didn't know anyone, right? I mean, I'd never written a book before, and it was just not something that I was trained to do. And so the community was this amazing way to meet like-minded people and feel challenged and feel connected. And then I think the big part for me is when we took it out of Quip and really engaged same exact way, Instagram, text, LinkedIn, and had those personal conversations was huge.
And I love to, I mean, maybe it's just authors and it's our nature to be more vulnerable and honest with each other. But I feel like a lot of the connections I've made, even on the Instagrams and the LinkedIn, it's like, hey, can I get your honest feedback? And we're willing to share it. And I think a lot of people hold back, but maybe that's the benefit of an author community is like, a lot of people think writing is very kind of like a solo sport almost, but it's really nice to have an embedded community where you have that encouragement and support, but you can do it on your own time and your own terms.
And you'll get that constructive criticism and feedback.
Yeah. It was like being part of a magical team. I mean, I really thought writing a book, it was like I am by myself in my office, just writing until my fingers bleed. And the most critical thing through this whole process is that it's written in a community, and there are a community of people who, want to see you succeed and want to connect with you and help you along that journey. And if I didn't go through this process and and write Life Interrupted through this writing community, I'm not sure I ever would have done it.
Yay, the power of writing in community. So beautiful, people. For anybody who's watching in our live audience, do not hesitate if you have any questions to drop a question inside of the comments along this side. Yes, this side. But in the meantime, Kelly and Lauren, do you have any final words of wisdom?
I would say, if you want to write anything, a book, anything, be ready and willing to be vulnerable, but it is probably single-handedly the most difficult and also the most fulfilling thing I have ever done in my life, other than birthing my children. So do
it. It is like a mind child.
Word baby.
Yep. Yep.
I think for me, a lot of people have since reached out to me saying like, oh, I want to write a book too. Like I want to be a bestseller. And like my feedback would be, don't do it for money. Don't do it for status, for title, and like pick something you're very passionate about to start with. And maybe it, like me and Kelly, it'll kind of find its own journey, but you're going to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money to this process. Like be ready to invest in it in all those different ways. And if you want to create a good product, you have to do it for the passion, and everything else will come.
It's a lot of work writing a book. If you want to do it just for money, status, title, make it easier. Go get a ghostwriter. Save yourself some time.
There are a lot easier ways to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%.
Not that avenue.
Yeah.
One of the things that someone said to me early on, and I can't remember which editor or somebody in the community had said to me is, you know, I kept saying, I want to write a bestseller. I want to write, and they pulled me down about 15 notches and said, whether a book, I said, I wanted to write something good. Whether a book is good or not, it rests solely on the reader, right? Your job as an author is to get the story out of your head and into a format that the reader can absorb it. Because as they mentioned, you know, Stephen King, some people love his work and some people hate his work. That isn't his job, right? His job is to write the story. It's the reader's job to read the story and decide whether they like it or not. And that was really a huge mind shift for me.
Yeah, I heard that, like, at first I was like, oh, I want a bestseller and all of this stuff. But something that kind of changed my perspective, I cannot tell you where I read this, where I heard it, whatever. But it was like, your fifth book will be your best book. Like you have to practice and you have to learn from each of your other books. And that really helped set my expectations where like, this is just a learning experience. Mm-hmm. This is for me to learn. Do I even like the process of publishing? Do I even like the process of writing 70,000 words? Because that's a lot. And then I can like build from there. And with each book or each project, get better and better. And then by the time I get to my fourth or fifth book, if I choose to go there, then I'll have all the knowledge to create a really amazing product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Kelly and Lauren. You guys are incredible. And
that was fabulous wisdom.
Absolutely. And our audience, they're just so like just gobsmacked by your wisdom that they didn't trickle in any questions. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of activity when this live stream is up for the consumption of the world. So again, thank you so much for joining us in Coffee Chats, and please feel free to swing by anytime you would like.
Absolutely. Yeah, would love to. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining us.
Every time I'm astonished. That was fabulous wisdom. That will make great sound bites. If you take away nothing else from the rest of this call, just scrub to the last 10 minutes because it's going to stick with me all day.
No, just the whole notion of like really being in tune with yourself, being in tune with your purpose behind the book, and not doing it don't do it for the clout. That's not that we're not out here doing that. I mean, clout could be a nice side benefit, but it shouldn't be the main one. There are lots of other ways you can get it that are a lot less difficult.
Yeah.
Anywho, thank you so much for joining us. That's the first coffee chat of 2023 in the books. That's crazy. If you guys have any ideas for who you would like to see on Coffee Chats, what you would like to see discussed on Coffee Chats, as indicated in the banner below, suggest a topic in the comments. Feel free to get connected with Mackenzie and myself via the handles, sort of dancing along the bottom of the screen there. And we just love seeing you guys here. I always love being joined by the incredible Mackenzie Finklea, who had a birthday this week. Woo! And do not hesitate to reach out to us with anything and everything. And we look forward to you joining us for coffee again soon.
See you next time.